Right, we are in section 7 of unit 6. We are going to be talking about the cities, urbanization movement to the cities during this section. So, what is urbanization? It is the movement of populations from rural or country to urban city life. And the main reason, the reason that needs to be in the forefront, star this in your brain, that people are moving to the cities is because of the possibility of employment. Where are the factories? They're in the cities. Where are most of the jobs then? In the cities. That opportunity to rise through the ranks of society was presented to the people, and the road to get there is in the city. The second industrial revolution is going to move America into the age of steel and electricity. So, the ability to literally build up the cities, is going to be made possible by the industrial revolution. And kind of the magic of electricity draws people in as well. Factories and the transportation system emerges within the cities. Public transportation is going to draw people in. And we are going to see a mass of unskilled immigrants move to the cities to start a new life in what becomes known as the land of opportunity, America. So the question becomes, why cities in the first place? Okay, cities offer jobs in factories, which is going to attract immigrants from other countries where maybe there was not an accessibility to jobs, and rural Americans. That allure of the cities, of a new life, of a different life, will draw in Americans from a rural setting. Women are also going to see opportunity within the cities as factory workers, servants, teachers, secretaries, typists. So cities offer opportunity not just to men, but women as well. Cities, like I said in the beginning, are going to offer a way to move through the social classes. If you come in and you are in the lower class, then you can move to the middle, to the upper classes through hard work in the cities. Cities are also glamorous. They have theaters, they have museums, they have social clubs, they have public transportation. This is all new. I know it doesn't sound cool now, but at this time, when you lived in the middle of nowhere where your nearest neighbor could be miles upon miles away, and the only people you saw regularly were your family, the cities, living near people, meeting new people, different population, that was extremely glamorous at the time and drew people in. Today, we even complain about it. There's not much to do around here. We drive into the city to go to malls, to go to a restaurant we like. It offers that same draw in, the brightness, the shiny that people want to see. Within the cities, transportation allows for easy movement. So you could go from city to city to city easily, quickly, different parts of the city easily and quickly. And many people are going to do just that. They'll start in one city, go to another to try to improve their social standing and try out as many different jobs that they could possibly have. Now there are some downsides, some negative effects to the cities, and first and foremost, it's going to be the housing. Many in the city who are working in these factory jobs, they don't have the money to ride that public transportation that seemed so glamorous to draw them in. And because of that, they're going to have to live within walking distance of their places of work, which meant that they were living in these high rises that were called tenements. Tenements are low cost, multi-family housing structures that were designed to fit as many people as possible. And these would become incredibly popular. Think about it this way: if you have a small apartment and you don't have enough money to pay for it, you get roommates. You have more people living there. So in these tenements, you would have everybody within this small one bedroom, oftentimes working to support you. And that meant mom, dad, children, maybe grandparents, maybe friends, uncles, aunts, everybody, whole families would live in these very small apartments. And these apartments would exist in a building that had many apartments where many families did the same thing. They had many, many people living in one apartment, paying to kind of live in the lowest of rent places that you possibly could. Now, along with that, toilets are going to be shared in if there was any indoor plumbing at all. So you aren't going to see in these tenements, these apartments, everybody isn't going to have their own toilet, their own shower, anything like that. No, it's going to be shared. Sometimes there'd be a couple per building, sometimes there'd be one per floor. It really depended on where you were living and how it was built. But it plumbing was indoor plumbing was kind of a luxury, and bathrooms, if you didn't have a toilet, you were going in a bucket. And where would we empty those buckets? Right out onto the streets. The streets this time are going to be unpaved. Some are cobblestone, some are dirt. It really depends on where you're at, how much the city was willing to put into the streets. And oftentimes they were covered in trash. The picture that you see up at the top, that's a dead horse and children are playing next to it. This is not a time where you had weekly trash pickup. No. If the city looked at your part of town where the lower income people were living, they weren't putting the money into sanitation. Not at all. The streets could clean themselves. Garbage would degrade itself. It might stink for a while, it might be messy, but it beats paying people to do that job in a part of town where we don't really care about it anyway. So, highly disgusting. And when you have people living really close together in these tenements, nothing's getting cleaned, that means disease can spread rather quickly, which it does. The other dangers of the city, fire and crime. If one fire started in one building, these buildings were so close together that entire city blocks could be burned all at once because it took, again, so long for fire departments to get there. And sometimes uh, in these parts of town where poor people were living, nobody wanted to go take care of them. If a building burned, so be it. If a whole city block burned, so be it. Um, so you could see fires being extremely devastating. And because tenement housing housed so many people, uh, many people's lives would be in danger if one building caught fire. Within the cities, when you have people moving from different parts of the country, when you have people moving from other countries into the United States and being in these cities, we would see rival groups and gangs forming. Immigrant groups would have their own gangs. People that immigrated from or migrated from different places within America would have their own gangs, and they would rival against each other, fighting for territory and jobs and just really turning in on themselves. And you would see crime running rampant through the streets. And with the corruption in government, there wasn't really anybody to stop it. Police weren't going in and taking apart the gangs or, supporting one group or another. But so you would see crime, petty and otherwise, being very prevalent in the cities. Now, enough with the negative. Let's look at a little positive. Within the cities, you're going to see new transportation systems. You're going to see the trolley bus, the streetcar, the tram, allowing for transportation across the cities. This would become very important within the cities. People would rely on it. They wouldn't need their own vehicles if they could afford the public transportation. Because of the steel industry and the idea that you could buy steel cheaper, you're going to see taller commercial buildings known as skyscrapers being built. They're going to be made of fireproof iron, and these structures are going to become sort of an art form. And the steel industry is going to make that possible. Bridges are going to be built of steel. The Brooklyn Bridge, a great example of this. Within the city, you're going to see museums, theaters, art galleries, libraries being built. A real focus on this education, variety of culture being paid attention to. A lot of these museums, theaters, art galleries, libraries are going to be built with the money that is donated by the different captains of industry. Also, we're going to see hospitals improving health and survival rates. Now, I don't want to make it seem too fluffy, too pretty, because we still have the negative effects going on as well. But the positive that we see in the cities is what draws the attention of other nations to the United States. With the fast pace that our cities built up, and what they looked like and what the possibilities were that were there, other nations are going to look at the United States and say, holy cow, that's awesome. They're doing great. They're catching up to the rest of the world. And that's what really gives us this name of a superpower on the rise. So, what we do in this time period of the Second Industrial Revolution gains the attention of other nations around the world. Okay, social classes. We are going to have three distinct social classes at this time. The first, the lower class. This is going to be the impoverished, poverty stricken factory workers that's going to take up 2/3 of the population. The lower class is the majority throughout the Gilded Age, okay? The lower class is the majority throughout the Gilded Age. They are the have nots, and they're going to be a lot of unskilled workers, uneducated, and they are all going to fall below the poverty line. But what's interesting is they had the majority, and if they used their power to benefit themselves, then maybe we could have seen a turn. Now, the way that you would think that they could harness that power and turn things around would be through voting, the power of the people to choose who is representing them in the government. And this is where we see full circle back to those political machines, because the lower class, that majority, was being bullied into voting for politicians that were not doing anything for them. They were being paid off, threatened, and manipulated into voting for corrupt politicians that would keep them down instead of letting them rise up. So the lower class, while they had the majority, they didn't have the strength or the power to change their situation. Now, there is a middle class, but it does not hold much of the population. It's going to be mostly non existent until corporations are going to grow to include white collar workers. White collar workers are going to be managers, engineers, sales reps, and this class of workers won't really come out until down the road. So during this Gilded Age that we're talking about, it's not a very populated social class. The other main social class of the time was the wealthy class. Now, this is a figure that every year blows my mind, but it is 10% of the population that was controlling 90% of the wealth. So, just a small fraction of the population, 10%, is controlling almost all of the wealth in the United States. This class is going to argue for free labor and working hard to achieve your success. And that argument is going to be that social Darwinism. We got here because we worked hard to achieve our success. anybody can do what we did. It's of their own fault that they're not doing it for themselves. So the wealthy class is very manipulative of the time because they'll use that argument in their favor. The wealthy class is going to remain in power because money talks. They can pay off anybody and anybody that they want to in order to stay in power. And this gap between the rich and the rich being such a small part of the population and the poor being so large, but their lives being so vastly different, is going to cause issues for the United States moving forward. But just know that the social classes, the lower class had the majority, living in poverty well below poverty level. The wealthy class had the minority, but the majority of the wealth, and that's what kept them in power for so long. The next time we come together, we'll talk about immigration and how that was impacting the United States and who was coming to the United States during the Gilded Age.